How's it going, everybody? Hope you guys are doing well. Well, here is a Nano QX3D setup for FPV. And in this video, I'm going to show you guys the setup and some FPV video. I was going to do a tiny whoop out of the Inductrix because everybody's doing tiny whoops these days. But then I looked over the shelf and I saw this Nano QX3D just sitting there. And I thought, I wonder how that would be for FPV. And so while I talk about it, I'll play some FPV footage from this quadcopter so you can see how it flies, how it looks. And after looking at the quad, I realized it had some really nice qualities to make it into an FPV quad. For one thing, it's a little bit bigger. The motors are a little bit bigger. Flies with a 200 milliamp single cell battery. And by the way, the quad is all stock. These are the stock motors, stock battery, 200 milliamp single cell. So nothing upgraded on it, just converted for FPV. And after looking at it, I realized some things are nice about it. The battery holder on the top here actually has an angle to the top of it. So it's facing the wrong way as it sits stock. If you stick your camera right on it without flipping it around, your camera is actually be angled downward, which is not what you want. But a couple screws on the bottom there, just take those out, flip around the camera mount, and now your camera has some up angle. Just stick it on with some double-sided servo tape. This is the Cricket Cam, by the way. Stick it on with some double-sided servo tape, and you've got a little up angle there. It's not extreme, but it's just right, I think, for flying it with some nice smooth forward flight in the self-leveling mode. You could increase the up angle if you wanted to by adding a shim to it. Certainly could get it to be more extreme. But I kind of like it right where it is. So that's perfect. So you don't need a 3D printed part to attach your camera. You can just stick it right on to the battery mount. It has some soldering pads on the bottom of the board right there, as you can see. So you can just wire your camera directly to the board. No need for some Y harnesses and extra wiring, stuff like that. And as you can see right there, now the board, it's not labeled as far as polarity, but you can see that the positive side is towards the edge of the quad and the negative is towards the middle. So there's a polarity. You can just directly solder your camera to it. Just leave enough wiring so that you have enough room to fit your battery in and you don't have a lot of wire kind of hanging around, and you can make a nice clean setup. So this quad weighs 28 grams all up in the stock form. That's with the canopy and the little fin on the bottom for hand launching it. Take off the canopy and cut off that fin like I did, and you can save a gram. You could cut off a little more plastic on the bottom there because all this piece does is hold on the battery mount. So you could cut the back and the front off too if you wanted to and try to save a little bit more weight. But that's going to save you a gram. So you're going to be at 31 grams all up for the FPV quad. So 3 gram weight gain, which is not a lot, but it is almost 11%. So because of that, I don't fly this for more than about 3 minutes. I think you could fly a little longer than that, but you're kind of pushing it. I like to land at 3 minutes to let the motors cool down, give the battery a break, and then recharge it and go. I only have one battery. Now, if you had a bunch of batteries, you could fly it a lot more, obviously. But I still would recommend giving it about, maybe 5 or 10 minutes between flights just to cool the motors down and so you don't burn them out. Now, these motors have been flying for quite a while on the quad as far as line of sight. I did a lot of flights when I was doing it before, and I've flown a bunch of FPV flights now, and they're holding up pretty good. So they are actually pretty decent motors, it seems like. They can handle the extra weight, but just don't push it too hard. So what's kind of cool about this is that you have the standard, self-leveling mode, which gives you decent speed. It's not real restricted, so you can actually fly pretty quick through the trees, stuff like that. And then you also have these other modes, the inverted mode, where it will self-level inverted by spinning the props the other way. And then the 3D mode, which flies like a collective pitch helicopter. Of course, you're not changing the pitch on the props, but you're reversing the motors around the center stick and then increasing, decreasing the throttle so you can fly it as though it's collective pitch. And that could make for some very interesting and fun FPV. I haven't done that yet because I don't want to smash this thing into the ground too hard right away, but that could make for some very interesting FPV, no question about it. I really like this Cricket Cam, guys. This is a very nice little unit. Flying it in the park where I normally get a lot of interference with the Spectrum unit. This one, hardly any interference. In fact, I don't even recall any interference really. I could fly pretty far away. The signal holds up well. Very crisp, good colors. So very nice little unit. I like it a lot better than the Spectrum unit. So here's the thing. This quadcopter comes in at 60 bucks buy and fly. The Cricket Cam you can get for 35 bucks. So you're looking at about 95, 100 bucks ready to fly, or after you build it, ready to go. Whereas the Nano QX FPV, the Nano QX2 FPV is 160 bucks. So this is going to be 60 bucks less for basically a buy and fly, and it takes about 20 minutes to build it, put it together. So really very little time at all to get it going. The FPV is good. I like seeing the little motor pods in the front there. You don't really see the props, so you have a nice, clean visual. And really, it's a lot of fun. I'm actually having a lot of fun flying this thing. I'm gonna probably try flying it 3D at some point, but I kind of want it to last. But speaking of that, I have crashed this thing a number of times. I've crashed it pretty hard, straight into a slide at about full speed. I've crashed it into the ground a few times, and a few times I've knocked the camera off of the mount, and everything else was fine. This quad, you know, I've crashed it a bunch line of sight. It's a tough quad. It can handle crashes. The camera and the antenna are going to be the weak spots, but they're holding it pretty good. I've knocked the camera off without any other damage. The camera's still working. The only thing I've had to replace is the servo tape because it gets debris on it, and then you can't stick the camera back on. So you may have to replace that every now and then, because if your camera starts getting loose, you don't want it to come off in flight. So that's it, guys. That is the Nano QX3D set up for FPV. Very nice little platform for it. I'm having a lot of fun with it. Any questions or comments, please post below. I'll see you guys next time.